as concerned as samurai officials and many samurai in general were about the fate of Japan, it must be pointed out that the commoners were no less concerned. They had many of the same kinds of concerns and were using, well, maybe let's put it this way, the expansion of the economy, the expansion of printing, the expansion of literacy really set the conditions by which commoners could communicate their concerns amongst themselves, and really kind of made them part of this national discussion, this Japan-wide discussion about how to deal with these foreigners. It was not just a case of samurai telling commoners what to do and commoners meekly obeying and hoping that the samurai would take care of it. You had the proliferation, as I said, of many printed materials that were kind of patriotic in nature. Here are some examples. These are fascinating. This is from a toy, a very cheap toy. What it was a picture of a Japanese fortification here, a cannon, and then a Western ship out in the bay. And on the original toy, there was kind of a mixture of this gunpowder-like substance that stretched from one to the other. And what you did is you set a match to this end, and it would fizzle, 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 pop, 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 and simulate a gunshot going out and blowing up this Western ship. But this was a commoner's toy. There were also other depictions of what we should do with foreigners. Here is basically a kind of a pastiche of these super Japanese things, some Japanese legends. Basically, this is good old Japan being represented here, and here is this crazy foreigner. What do you do with foreigners? You just fart on them and get them to go away. And actually, this certainly also made for and by commoners. But these kinds of artistic expressions didn't end there. There were other so-called kawaraban, these essentially one-sheet newspapers, we can think of them this way, that were printed once again by commoners for commoners, which ran the gamut from curiosity in the Westerners to things something like this, that we need to resent the Westerners and get them out, to criticism of the samurai for failing to kick the Westerners out already. So what we are seeing is an increasing participation in the political life of Japan by commoners, and this was certainly a trend that would continue in Japan down to this very day. So not only were the samurai failing to really deal well with the arrival of these foreigners, they were failing more or less to surmount that crisis, but the lower orders of society, as they would have been seen, the merchants, the peasants, the artisans, they were becoming increasingly assertive and interested in political affairs. So what's the takeaway from this whole opening of Japan? Basically, I keep coming back to the fact that the Westerners forcibly refashioned the shape of Tokugawa foreign relations. And this was a serious, serious challenge, and one, a blow from which the Tokugawa never really recovered. They lost exclusive control over, they lost the exclusive ability to dictate the shape of foreign relations within Japan. And if foreigners had come in and reshaped them, that was really dangerous. There was a loss of sovereignty. If sovereignty is the monopoly on violence, as described by this dead German named Max Weber. If it's control of the police, of things that basically allow the government to exert pressure throughout area that they claim to control, then these treaties really represented the loss of sovereignty in some cases, such as extraterritoriality. Territorial boundaries were withdrawn. I'm sorry, they were redrawn. In fact, they were the opposite of withdrawn. In Ezo, they were placed there for the first time. And this was certainly important, but this was yet another important because it kind of kept Japan together as a territorial unit and even expanded it. But it was also seen as another imposition from the outside. And also, very importantly, old-style ties with Asia, which were governed by that paradigm of the ancestral law that we had talked about at such length. These ties were not cut. It was almost as if Japan functioned according to two foreign relations paradigms for the remainder of the Tokugawa period. One facing the West, in which they were clearly in an inferior position, and one facing Asia, where China, Japan, and Korea were doing their best to pretend as if nothing had changed, and would do so until the end of the Tokugawa period. But these ties, the ties with Asia, became ever less important in the face of increased ties with the West. We've already seen how Tsushima's Korean trade had been declining really since the early 18th century. The volume of trade with China was still great, but also declining, while trade with the West exploded. And some Japanese products even found great demand in the West, especially tea and silk. And so the commercial life of Japan was also in some ways being redefined by these Europeans. In some ways the Japanese would profit from this, but in many ways they would not. All of this amounted to an enormous loss of face for the Tokugawa, and really, once again, amounted to a challenge to their authority that they would never really overcome.